Is this the end? Seth jumped out of the way, Titus slid to the side and growled. Seth circled Titus, Titus huffed and ran at Seth and stabbed his side. Seth quickly kicked with his hind legs to the side, knocking Titus off. Titus stumbled to the side and nearly fell over. Seth spun around, Titus dashed over to Seth and attempted to stab his eye. Seth ducked, nearly getting hit and bit Titus' neck. Titus shook around but couldn't get Seth off, so he dragged Seth to the cliff. Seth knew what Titus was trying to do, so he let go and jumped back. Seth then charged at Titus and bit his shoulder. Titus twisted his head around and stabbed Seth's neck. Titus managed to put enough force where the knife was deep enough to have the knife stick into his neck. Blood poured out of Seth's mouth and where the knife was. Seth let go of Titus' shoulder and quickly grabbed Titus' neck. He pulled him towards the cliff. Titus struggled to get out of Seth's grip. Seth huffed and threw Titus off the cliff. Seth then pulled the knife out of his neck and burned the knife in the fire. Seth took a few steps back and fell over, resting for a bit. Long enough for the bleeding to stop. While resting, he thought about Cairo and Cleo and how they couldn't have been taken to safety. Seth got up, he walked over to the rocks, he climbed up. He took a deep breath and climbed down and into the level of the fire. It was worse than before. He ran through the fire and to the abandoned shed. The front was on fire. He looked around, then through a hole in the wood. Cairo and Cleo were huddled in a corner far from the fire. Cleo noticed Seth. Seth! Cleo yelled. Cleo! Are you guys okay? I mean, I shouldn't be asking since I know you're not, Seth said. Yeah, look at that raging fire. Cairo said. Seth looked around, he then saw some weak wood, but not weak enough for him to break it. Cairo, how are you so calm under pressure? We're going to die. Cleo said. I lived too long anyway. Cairo said. Hey Cleo, can you break this wood? Cleo walked over and tried to break it but couldn't. Nope. Darn. Any more ideas? Yes, I could get Ren to help me. Do you even know where she is? The fields, that's the only place around here that the fire cannot reach. Since I told her to get the dogs to safety, please be quick. I will be as fast as I can. Seth dashed off. Yerho, he's not going to make it in time and we're gonna die. Cairo said. Shut up, Cairo. Seth dashed through the forest. He then quickly stopped in front of a dry gorge. Suddenly, Titus jumped out from behind Seth. Seth quickly turned around. Titus? I thought I killed you. You thought I would be killed that easily? Well, yeah. Well, you're wrong. Titus snarled. Seth did too. When they were about to leap at each other, they paused when they heard a rumble. What's that? A stampede is coming. Of course, other animals are trying to get out of the fire. Soon a large elk herd jumped out the bushes and filled up the gorge. Seth looked behind him and then quickly at Titus. Titus was trying to push Seth into the gorge while he wasn't looking. Seth tried to dodge, though Titus jumped and slammed me to the ground midair and pinned me down. You're still weak, Titus said, biting Seth's throat and suffocating him. But Titus let go. You know, this isn't a fun death for you. How about we do this King Lion style? Titus looked over at the gorge. He got a good grip on Seth before getting off him and dragging him. Seth put up a good fight to resist but was still dragged along. Titus threw Seth into the stampede. Seth being hit by an antler, then hitting an elk's side, then fell on the ground. Seth barely dodges hooves, but then soon he started running with the herd. After running with the herd a bit, was out of the gorge and fell into the lake. The gorge was most likely dried up from the intense heat. Seth swam to shore and knew he was in the fields now. He sniffed around, then saw a very giant group of dogs. It was his pack. He ran into the crowd yelling for Ren. Ren! Soon Ren ran over. Seth! You're okay? Of course I am, but I need your help to rescue Cairo and Cleo. Where are they? In an abandoned shed on fire. Come on. Seth ran back into the forest fire, Ren following Seth. Though the flames were getting worse by the minute. I don't think we'll be able to make it there, Seth. Ren said, coughing. We have to get there, if they die it's my fault. Seth yelled at Ren, running faster. Seth! Ren yelled, coughing even harder but sped up to keep up with Seth. The shed. Seth said. He ran over to the shed that was now almost completely on fire. Seth guided Ren to the loose plank, though it was no use to break it now since fire was right behind the blank. No! No! Seth yelled and ran to the gap where they could talk to Cairo and Cleo. Cleo! Cairo! Seth yelled. Cleo and Cairo were on the ground, they were running out of air, they were dying. Seth, Cleo said, looking up at Seth slowly. Ren, can you break it? Seth said. Maybe. Ren clawed the plank, she broke the plank and made a hole Cleo and Cairo could squeeze through. That's all I can do. Ren said. Guys, you can get out now. Seth said. They moved away from the hole so they had room to get out. Cleo got up and shook Cairo. Cairo looked up at Cleo. Cairo! We can finally escape. You go, Cleo, I'll be right behind you. Cleo nodded and squeezed through the planks. Your turn, Cairo. Seth said. There was a long silence. Cairo. Cleo looked through the hole. Cleo, there's no point now, it's already too late. What do you mean, we can escape? Cleo, too much smoke got into my lungs and I'm far too weak to survive. No. We can still survive. Cleo went back into the shed and grabbed Cairo, he pushed Cairo out the hole then he squeezed out again. Seth, these flames have spread and, we're cornered now. Ren said, looking around. What? Seth said. If we stay in this area, Seth said. We're going to die, Cleo finished the sentence, looking at Seth. Cairo stood up, his legs shaking. I had an idea, everybody looked at Cairo. If I'm correct, if you throw something large into the fire goes down for a very short amount of time. Long enough for you guys to jump over the fire, and since I'm going to die anyway, we're not throwing you into the fire. Seth said. Cleo agreed. Cairo signed and lied down. If this is truly the end, let's make every moment count. Cleo sat down next to Cairo. Ren sat down and Seth lied down. What should we, even do? Ren said. Share moments? You first, Seth. Cleo said. All right, let's see if I have anything excited. Oh, I know. On a very stormy night, I was still a puppy, and my parents were strays. I was separated from my family due to animal control, but I managed to escape the van since they forgot to lock my cage's door. Though jumping out the vehicle really hurt and I was lost in the middle of the city, cold and afraid. I wandered around the city, then suddenly I heard a loud snarl from behind me. I turned around to see a golden retriever, it had many scars. It chased me into a corner, when I was cornered it was about to attack me. Then suddenly I could feel my legs being picked off the ground and carried to safety. Then I was thrown onto a roof, I looked up to see an Philippine eagle. The flames circling got a bit closer. Go on, Ren said. Seth would nod. I wasn't scared at all, you saved me. I yelled. The eagle asked me if I wanted to go to her nest or drop me off somewhere safe. Since I had nowhere to go right now, I asked to go to her nest. The eagle carefully grabbed me, trying not to poke me with her sharp talons, and we flew to her nest. Her nest was quite huge. She dropped me into the nest and perched on the thick branch the nest was on. There was a brown tabby Maine Coon kitten curled up in the nest. She soon opened her beautiful greenish-brown eyes. Dude, are you in love with a cat? Cleo said. What the heck, no. Just let me finish my story. The kitten got up and looked at me, I could tell she was full with excitement seeing me. She greeted me happily and told me how long she wanted somebody to hang out with ever since she was ripped from her family. I asked how she was separated, she told me that her mother was a house cat that had to hide her and her 2 sisters and 1 brother from their owners. She didn't understand why until they found them. The old man of the family found them and stuffed them into a sack. She said she could hear her mother's cries and pleads. The old man went outside and locked the door on her mother and then threw the sack into the river. The sack quickly filled up with water and they all started to drown. She watched as her brother and sisters died. She said she must have had strong lungs since she could hold her breath longer than her sisters and brothers. Soon the sack was lifted up and water left the sack. She gasped for air. Soon the sack was flipped upside and the bodies fell on her. The eagle opened the sack and searched through the sack for an alive kitten. The eagle found her and pulled her out the sack by the leg. She at first panicked, but the eagle told her that she wasn't going to hurt her and said she rescued her. The eagle asked where her parents were. She said up the stream and at a house next to the river, but said she couldn't go there since an old man lived in the house and that old man threw her and her siblings into the river. The eagle asked her if she wanted her to adopt her. She said yes, and the eagle took her to her nest and cared for her ever since. I talked to her a bit and asked for her name. She said it was Amica. We lived under the care of the Philippine eagle for a few months. What happened to your parents? Cleo said never found them again. Anyway, at some point when we're too big for the nest, the Philippine eagle had us follow the paths of solitude. Which is her way of saying you're too old to live with me, and we had to move out and survive the streets. Though she was nice enough to show us a safe area where we could start out. The flames has gotten even closer. Wow, the best story I have is the time I got my head stuck in a fence. Cleo said. Ren, do you have a story? I prefer not to tell. Why not? I mean, we're going to die anyway. Cleo said. You don't always know that. Ren responded. Cairo slowly lifted his head. I'll tell a story. I was a young dog, or perhaps you could say teenage dog. Anyway, I was lost in the middle of a blizzard. I was so cold I could barely walk. So I decided to give up and fall over to die, though soon I saw a giant wolf that was white as snow walk over to me. And an unneeded detail, but back when I was little, coy dogs didn't exist in this forest at the time. It was just wolves vs dogs. Anyway, the wolf lied down on top of me for a good 10 minutes to warm me up, then guided me to a warm den to seek shelter from this blizzard. I asked the wolf what her name was. The wolf told me it was North Neva. She then told me she had to leave right now or she would get in trouble with a wolf called Anpu Adolfo. The wolf then quickly raced off, disappearing into the blizzard. Wow, soon they heard a whirring sound. Soon they saw a helicopter fly over them and spray water around the fire. Yes, the fire extinguisher helicopter. Cleo yelled. See, you don't always know if you are going to die or not. Ren said. They returned back to pack grounds. The dogs were back at the pack grounds now that the fire was gone. Seth climbed onto the howl rock and explained that Titus was the murderer. Other dogs howled on the story to other pack grounds. Where is Titus now? A bloodhound said. No clue, but if I had to guess, he's about to storm in and lie about me killing somebody or something. Seth said, and as Seth expected, Titus jumped out of the bushes. Guys, Seth is the killer. He tried to kill me and said that he had to kill me because I was on to him. He threw me into the fire that he started. Titus said, panting and doing a fake cry. Man, that's the stupidest lie that has ever been told. An Alaskan Malamute said. But the sneakiest sneak who ever snuck. A Newfoundland dog said. What does that even mean, and what was the point of that sentence? A commodore from behind them said. No idea. The Newfoundland dog said. What do you mean lie? Titus said. He then looked up at Seth on the howl rock. Oh no, Titus said. Soon the crowd around Titus started to snarl. You set the whole forest on fire and killed so many animals and attempted to kill the whole Douglas pack. A pit bull said, snarling and crying at the same time. My puppies are dead because of you. Titus slowly backed up. Whoa, wait, I had to because of Lily. Titus felt claws impale his side. he looked up to see Ren sticking her claws into his side and growling. Ren threw Titus to the side, and he hit the ground hard. Pathetic, Darius yelled. Soon dogs ran up to him and killed him, blood going everywhere. The pack will surely be much better without him. A poodle said. Soon Cairo collapsed on the ground. Cairo! Cleo yelled, he then scooped Cairo up onto his back. We took too long to take him to the medic den. Cleo shook his head and raced to the medic den. We'll take his body to Ren's den tonight, Damon said, looking over Titus' body. Seth hopped off the Howl Rock and ran over to Damon. Why Ren's den? Seth said. Ren's water requires dead bodies to stay magical. Oh. You should rest, Seth, you seem tired. I guess you're right. Seth went to his bed and slept. A few hours later, news was given about Cairo. And just like how Cairo expected, he died due to inhaling too much smoke. The smoke slowly killed him from the inside. Cleo and Seth ran to the medic den. Delilah, please tell me this isn't true. Cleo yelled. Delilah sadly pointed to the dead body of Cairo. Cleo graved and sat next to the body. I want a true funeral and him to not be fed to some magic water. Cleo yelled. Of course. We would never throw a good dog into Ren's water, you know that. Delilah said, I know, I just forgot for a moment. Cleo said, wiping tears off his face. Damon then came into the medic den. Assuming you guys are going to attend Cairo's funeral. Yes, of course. Cleo and Seth said. Follow me, Seth, and Cleo, pick up Cairo's body and follow me. Damon said. Cleo lifted up Cairo's body onto his back and followed Damon. Damon gathered all the dogs that wanted to attend the funeral in Pack Ground A, then traveled to the Great Valley. There was a mossy, low-hanging tree. Damon jumped onto a branch, scaring away the birds that were on that branch, and sat down. He then howled. It was message to tell the dogs to meet at the great tree to attend Cairo's funeral. We waited for what seemed like 30 minutes before a bunch of dogs gathered. Evergreen sat next to Seth. Damon then howled a countdown for them to leave. 2 more dogs showed up and looked very tired since they wanted to make it here in time. Damon soon got up and jumped down. They then traveled far from their territory. They stopped by a large lake that was covered with giant lily pads. 3 Irish wolfhounds worked together to carry a giant lily pad. And after what seemed like forever, we made it to a beach. We're far outside the protected area. Cleo said. Is this your first funeral? Evergreen said. Yes. Cleo said. Mine too. Seth said. Well, that's obvious that this is your first funeral, Seth. Evergreen said. Also, Cleo, what do you mean protected area? Seth said. Oh well, just like Yellowstone, we live in a protected area, but here humans aren't allowed to go into the forest unless there's an emergency. That's also the reason humans haven't found out about a giant pack of feral dogs living in the forest. What would happen if they discovered us? No clue, but I'm sure something bad. Don't let Cleo worry you, Seth. There have been millions of funerals and we haven't been caught once. Evergreen said. Also, we're going to be here for a long time, so yeah. Evergreen said and sat down. The dogs waited until the moon was right over the water. The Irish wolfhounds dropped the giant lily pad in the middle of the crowd. Cleo went over and carefully set Cairo into the giant lily pad. The Irish wolfhounds stood in front of the giant lily pad, getting ready to drag it into the sea. Damon walked over to the giant lily pad. Dogs, this is your only chance to share your last words with Cairo before he is set off to sea. Damon said and sat down. Cleo went over first. Cairo, you didn't deserve to die. Titus should have been the one to die in the fire, not you. I hope you'll be happy in heaven and perhaps we'll see each other again when my time comes. Cleo backed up for other dogs. Soon all the dogs gave their final messages to Cairo. Now, your kind messages shall be with Cairo forever as he truly passes into heaven through the sea. Damon said, pull him into the ocean, wolfhounds. Damon said. The Irish wolfhounds pulled the giant lily pad into the water, and they let go when they felt it lifting up onto the water, and then they quickly got out of the water. Soon a wave picked the giant lily pad up and took it into the sea. Everyone started howling, saying goodbye to Cairo as he drifted off to sea. Dogs returned back to the pack grounds to sleep. Now to take the body to Ren's den, Damon said, looking at Titus' dead body again. Seth walked over. Could I come? Let me ask Ren. Ren soon walked over. She didn't leave the pack grounds but was just waiting for them to return. Could I come, Ren? I don't see why not. Ren said and walked over to the dead body and grabbed it by the leg and dragged it to her den. No respect at all, but why should she have respect for the murderer of the woods? Damon and Seth followed Ren to her den and went inside. She walked over to the sparkling water and dropped the body in front of the water. The blue fireflies in the cave stopped moving around and stared at Ren. Ren then picked up the body again and then threw Titus' body into the water. Time moves but only in one way, your soul blows in the wind but never in reserve. This is your judgment day, and by judgment you will suffer and burn in Inferno Pandora. The water made an echoing ringing sound. The fireflies dropped down and stood on top of the water and circled the body that was floating on the water. The circling got faster and faster until a red whirlpool portal was opened up and the body was sucked into the portal. When the body was gone, the portal disappeared and the fireflies went back to what they were doing. Did I just watch a dog get sent to heck? Seth said. Yeah, but don't think about it too much. Damon said. Okay then. Seth said. Ren jumped onto a ledge. My job is done here, you're dismissed. Ren said and then left. Right after Ren left, a Philippine eagle landed on a branch outside. Those poor souls, they should have listened to that Titus or whatever that dog was called before they killed it, could have warned them for the far future. Oh well, the eagle flew off. A minute after the eagle flew off, Damon and Seth walked outside. You know, I wonder what the future holds for the pack. Seth said. Well, don't worry about anything super bad happening since the Titus thing had a 1 in a million chance of happening. Good. Seth and Damon went back to the pack grounds. And everything was back to normal, for now. The end. Or is it?